My husband looked me in the eyes and confessed his affair just weeks after I paid off his family's $150,000 debt. What he didn't expect was that I had already made a decision that would change his life forever. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Emily Carter, and for most of my marriage, I truly believed I was lucky. I worked hard, stayed loyal, and gave everything I had to my relationship. I believed in showing up every day, even when it was difficult. To me, marriage wasn't just about love during the good times. It was about standing together when life felt heavy and unfair. Ryan, my husband, had always been charming. People liked him easily. He knew how to smile, how to say the right things, how to make others feel comfortable. When we first got married, I felt chosen and safe. He told me I was his partner, his support system, his future. I believed him without hesitation. When his family fell into serious financial trouble, I didn't see it as his problem. I saw it as ours. The debt was overwhelming, and the stress weighed on Ryan every day. I watched him lose sleep, grow quiet, and carry guilt for something he felt responsible for. I didn't want him to face that burden alone. So I stepped up. I didn't complain or ask for praise. I used my savings, money I had worked years to build, and paid off his family's debt completely. I told myself money could always be earned again, but trust and family were priceless. I truly believed that sacrifice would bring us closer. After that, though, something changed. Ryan became distant in small ways at first. Conversations felt shorter. His attention drifted. I told myself he was just exhausted, adjusting, or ashamed that I had helped so much. I made excuses for him because that's what you do when you love someone deeply. I still cooked, still listened, still tried to keep peace. I trusted him even when my instincts whispered that something wasn't right. I believed loyalty meant patience. I believed silence was strength. I believed love could fix what stress had broken. What I didn't know was that while I was holding everything together, Ryan was already pulling away. I was giving more, and he was giving less. I thought we were surviving a storm together, but in reality, I was standing alone in it. Looking back, I see how quietly things were falling apart. At the time, I just kept going, convinced that commitment meant endurance. I never imagined the truth would come the way it did, or that the man I trusted most would reveal his betrayal so calmly. And yet, while he thought I was blind, broken, and dependent, I was already stronger than he realized. The trouble started with a phone call late one evening. Ryan's parents had been struggling for months, but that night everything collapsed at once. Medical bills had piled up after a serious health scare, and a small business they depended on had failed. The numbers were far beyond what they could manage. They were facing the real possibility of losing everything they had worked for. Ryan didn't try to hide how badly it affected him. I saw him crumble in a way I never had before. He stopped pretending to be strong and finally let himself fall apart. He talked about the guilt he carried, about how he felt like a failure as a son. One night, he sat across from me, his voice shaking, and begged for my help. Not demanded, begged. He said he didn't know where else to turn. I didn't hesitate. I didn't see it as a sacrifice at the time. I saw it as love in action. I started going through my finances carefully. I looked at my savings, my retirement account, and the small inheritance I had been holding on to for the future. Piece by piece, I pulled it all together. The total came to $150,000. It was everything I had worked years to build. When I made the payment, I felt a strange mix of fear and relief. Fear because it wiped me out financially. Relief because it erased the stress that had been crushing my husband and his family. I told myself money was temporary, but trust and unity were permanent. I believed I was doing the right thing. Ryan's parents were overwhelmed with gratitude. They cried when they realized the debt was gone. They hugged me, thanked me over and over, and called me an angel. His mother said she would never forget what I had done. His father said I had saved their lives. In those moments, I felt seen and valued in a way I never had before. Family dinners became warmer. Conversations felt lighter. I believed I had earned my place, not just as a wife, but as a true member of their family. I felt proud of myself for stepping up when it mattered most. I believed this act of love had secured our future. I imagined years ahead where this struggle would just be a memory. I thought Ryan would always remember who stood by him at his lowest. I believed loyalty like that could only strengthen a marriage. I told myself that sacrifices made from love always come back in the same form. I had no idea that while everyone was thanking me and praising my kindness, something else was quietly unfolding. I thought I had built safety and stability. Instead, I had unknowingly laid the foundation for a truth that would shatter everything I believed about love, trust, and partnership. After everything was settled, I expected life to slowly return to normal. The pressure was gone, the crisis was over, and I thought Ryan would finally breathe again. Instead, the distance between us began to grow. It wasn't loud or obvious at first. It was quiet, subtle, and confusing. Ryan stopped sharing his thoughts the way he used to. Conversations felt shallow, like he was somewhere else even when he was sitting right next to me. He stayed out late more often, saying work needed extra attention. When I asked simple questions, his answers were short. Sometimes his patience disappeared over small things, and his tone felt sharp in a way I didn't recognize. Affection slowly faded. There were fewer hugs, fewer kind words, and almost no warmth in his touch. I noticed it, but I didn't confront him right away. I didn't want to push him when I believed he was still recovering emotionally. I told myself that stress doesn't disappear overnight and that guilt can weigh on a person longer than fear. I started making excuses for him in my own mind. I told myself he was embarrassed that I had helped so much. I thought maybe he felt less like a man because he couldn't fix everything on his own. I convinced myself that his silence was shame, not secrecy. Some nights I lay awake wondering if I had done something wrong. I replayed conversations, searched for mistakes, and tried harder the next day. I stayed calm, supportive, and understanding. I believed patience was proof of love. I believed that good marriages survive quiet seasons if you don't give up too quickly. There were moments when something felt off, like a small crack beneath the surface. A missed call. A distracted look. A sudden change in mood. Each time, I pushed the thought away. I told myself not to be suspicious without reason. I trusted him because I wanted to, not because everything felt perfect. I reminded myself that real life isn't always romantic or easy. People grow tired. Relationships get tested. I believed commitment meant choosing each other even when it felt uncomfortable. I held on to the idea that this was just a phase we would eventually laugh about. Still, an uneasy feeling stayed with me. I couldn't name it or explain it, but it was there. Something had shifted, and I was the only one trying to hold us steady. I didn't have proof of anything, just a growing sense that the man beside me was slowly pulling away. I chose not to question it, believing trust was stronger than doubt, even as the silence between us grew heavier every day. One evening, Ryan told me we needed to talk. His voice was calm, almost too calm, as if he were discussing something ordinary. We sat across from each other in the living room. The house was quiet, and I remember thinking how strange it felt that such a serious moment could begin so casually. He didn't struggle to find words. He didn't look nervous or ashamed. He simply said there was something I needed to know. Then, without emotion, he admitted he had been having an affair. The woman's name was Lauren, someone he worked with. He said it plainly, like he was sharing a fact rather than confessing a betrayal. For a moment, I didn't understand what he was saying. My mind refused to catch up. I asked him how long it had been going on, hoping, almost praying, that it was recent, that it happened after everything else. He looked at me and said it started before I paid off his family's debt. That was the moment something inside me broke. The room felt distant, like I was watching myself from far away. Every memory replayed at once, every late night, every excuse I had made for him, every sacrifice I had justified in the name of love. It all suddenly felt false. Ryan leaned back and told me he felt relieved. Relieved that he didn't have to hide anymore. Relieved that the truth was finally out. He said carrying the secret had been exhausting for him. He didn't say he was sorry. He didn't ask how I felt. His comfort seemed to matter more than my pain. I couldn't cry. The tears wouldn't come. My chest hurt, but my body felt frozen. I stared at him, searching for regret in his face, but there was none. The man I thought I knew was gone, replaced by someone cold and unfamiliar. I realized in that moment that I hadn't just been betrayed. I had been used. While I was giving everything I had, he was living a double life. The love I thought we shared had been one-sided for longer than I ever imagined. I didn't scream or beg. I didn't ask for details. I just sat there, numb and silent, trying to understand how someone could accept such a sacrifice while hiding such a deep betrayal. The pain was too heavy for tears. All I felt was an overwhelming emptiness, and the quiet understanding that nothing would ever be the same again. After the silence settled, Ryan continued talking, as if the hardest part was already over. He said there was something else I should know. He admitted that he had already thought about leaving the marriage long before that night. He didn't say it with hesitation or sadness. He said it like a plan that had simply been delayed. He explained that he stayed because things were complicated and because it was easier to wait. He said he never meant to hurt me, but his words didn't match his actions. Hearing that he had been thinking about leaving while I was still giving everything shattered what little hope I had left. Then he said something that changed how I saw him forever. He told me that helping his family was the least I could do as his wife. Not a favor. Not a sacrifice. An obligation. As if my years of hard work and the money I gave meant nothing more than a duty he was entitled to. There was no apology in his voice. No regret in his eyes. He spoke as if he had done me a favor by being honest now. He talked about his future, about wanting happiness, about feeling free. At no point did he acknowledge the cost of what I had given or the damage his choices caused. That's when the truth became clear. I wasn't his partner. I wasn't someone he respected or protected. I was a solution. A safety net. A resource he could rely on while he made decisions for himself. The pain didn't disappear, but it changed shape. It stopped being sharp and became steady. I felt something shift inside me. The part of me that wanted to cry and beg slowly went quiet. In its place was clarity. I realized that love without respect is not love at all. That loyalty given to someone who feels entitled to it is just exploitation. I saw how carefully he had taken from me while giving himself permission to walk away. I didn't argue with him. I didn't defend myself or list everything I had done. I didn't need to. His words had already revealed everything I needed to know. He had shown me exactly how he saw me. That night marked the end of my confusion. The grief was still there, but it was no longer in control. For the first time since the truth came out, I wasn't thinking about saving the marriage. I was thinking about myself. And in that quiet moment, without anger or tears, I made a decision to stop being used and start protecting what was left of me. After that conversation, I didn't react the way Ryan seemed to expect. I didn't shout or accuse him. I didn't pack my bags or threaten him. I simply told him I needed time to process everything. I said I was overwhelmed and needed space to think. He accepted that easily, almost with relief. To him, my quietness looked like weakness. He assumed I was too hurt to do anything but sit with my pain. He moved around the house like someone who believed the hardest part was behind him. He spoke casually, avoided serious discussions, and acted as if time alone would soften the situation in his favor. While he believed I was breaking, I was paying attention. I stayed calm on the outside, but my mind was sharp. I started going through our records late at night when the house was quiet. Bank statements, emails, transfers, documents. I looked at everything carefully, without emotion, without rushing. I remembered every detail I had once ignored. I recalled how the money was moved, how the payments were labeled, and what had been said at the time. I remembered the promises made to me, the assurances that the money would be handled responsibly. I remembered words that now carried weight I hadn't recognized before. I took notes. I organized information. I made copies. I didn't let anger guide me. I let clarity do the work. Each document brought a strange sense of control back into my life. For the first time since the confession, I felt grounded. Ryan noticed my silence and mistook it for defeat. He didn't check on me emotionally. He didn't ask if I needed anything. His confidence grew, as if he believed I would eventually accept the situation and move on quietly. That misunderstanding worked in my favor. I kept my tone soft and my questions limited. I listened more than I spoke. I watched how he acted when he thought there were no consequences waiting. With every paper I reviewed and every memory that returned, a plan began to take shape. Not one fueled by revenge, but by fairness. I wasn't looking to hurt him. I was preparing to protect myself. There was a calm settling inside me, steady and intentional. I knew something important was coming. Ryan couldn't see it yet, but the balance had already started to shift. And this time, I wasn't the one about to be caught off guard. Once I was clear on what needed to be done, I started taking quiet, careful steps. The first thing I did was separate our finances. I opened new accounts in my own name and redirected my income there. I didn't announce it or make a scene. I handled it the same way I handled everything else, calmly and privately. As I continued reviewing documents, one detail stood out clearly. The money I had paid to clear his family's debt was not listed as a gift. It was recorded as a loan. At the time, I hadn't thought much about it. Now, I understood its importance. That single detail changed everything. I went through the paperwork again and again to be certain. The wording was clear. The transfers, the confirmations, the written acknowledgments, all pointed to the same conclusion. What I had given was legally recoverable. It wasn't an act of charity. It was a financial agreement. With that knowledge, I began preparing formal repayment demands. Everything was tied to clear legal obligations, not emotion. I made sure each detail was accurate and supported. I didn't rush. I wanted it done properly, without mistakes. Ryan started noticing changes. He asked casual questions about money, about accounts, about plans. His tone shifted. The confidence he once carried began to crack. He sensed something was happening, even if he didn't fully understand it yet. When I finally told him that the debt repayment wasn't a gift, his reaction was immediate. His face changed. He asked questions quickly, then tried to downplay it. He said it wasn't fair. He said I was being dramatic. But his voice lacked certainty. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice or accuse him of anything. I explained the situation clearly and briefly. I told him the repayment process would move forward as documented. Nothing more. Nothing less. That calm unsettled him more than anger ever could. He realized I wasn't acting from pain anymore. I was acting from clarity. The situation was no longer emotional, it was real, measurable, and unavoidable. He tried to regain control by minimizing the situation, but the facts didn't bend for him. Each time he spoke, his words carried less weight. Each time I responded, I stayed steady and composed. For the first time since the confession, the power shifted. I wasn't reacting to his choices anymore. I was setting boundaries and enforcing them. I didn't need to threaten or punish. The consequences were already in motion. Ryan had believed honesty would free him. Instead, it exposed him to accountability. And as he began to understand that, I remained exactly the same, quiet, firm, and completely unshaken. The repayment request didn't stay private for long. Ryan's parents received the formal notice and were confused at first. They reached out to me, clearly upset and unsure why this was happening. I explained everything calmly, without emotion or exaggeration. I showed them the documents and reminded them of the terms that had been agreed upon at the time. They were shocked. They had believed the money was a gift given out of love. When they realized it was a loan, their confusion turned into concern. They asked why I would take this step now. That was when the full truth came out. They confronted Ryan directly. This time, he couldn't avoid the conversation or soften the facts. They learned about the affair, when it started, and how long it had been hidden. They learned that he accepted the money knowing he was already betraying his marriage. The truth hit them harder than the financial demand. Their gratitude toward me didn't disappear, it transformed. What once felt like praise became deep shame on his behalf. They apologized to me, not once, but repeatedly. They said they never would have accepted the money if they had known the truth. Their anger wasn't directed at me. It was directed at their son. Ryan tried to explain himself, but his words carried no weight anymore. His parents saw him clearly for the first time. The respect they once had faded quickly, replaced by disappointment. He lost the protection and support he had always relied on. As the situation unfolded, people stopped seeing Ryan as the victim of bad luck. They saw him as someone who made choices and avoided responsibility. The story was no longer his to control. Lauren didn't stay around for long. Once the stability she expected started to crumble, she slowly stepped back. There were no dramatic endings or confrontations. She simply faded out of his life, just as quietly as she had entered it. Ryan found himself alone in ways he hadn't anticipated. The people he thought would stand by him didn't. The version of events he hoped to protect no longer existed. I stayed silent through it all. I didn't celebrate or seek validation. I let the truth speak for itself. For the first time, Ryan was facing consequences without anyone shielding him. And this time, there was no one else to blame. As the pressure grew, Ryan's life began to unravel. The financial demands became real and unavoidable. Payments were expected, timelines were set, and there was no easy way out. The confidence he once carried disappeared, replaced by stress and fear. The safety he assumed would always be there was gone. He became isolated quickly. Friends stopped calling. Family kept their distance. Without support, he struggled to hold everything together. The weight of his decisions finally caught up with him, and there was no one left to shield him from the consequences. That was when he came to me again. This time, his tone was different. He wasn't calm or confident. He was desperate. He apologized, not with sincerity, but with urgency. He asked for forgiveness, not because he understood the pain he caused, but because he needed relief. I listened without reacting. I didn't interrupt or argue. I recognized the pattern clearly. This wasn't love. It was survival. And I had learned the difference. I told him no. Not with anger, not with bitterness, but with certainty. I refused to be pulled back into a cycle where my kindness was treated as weakness. I refused to rescue someone who had already shown me who they were. Soon after, I filed for divorce. I did it quietly and with intention. There was no need for drama or revenge. I focused on fairness, clarity, and closure. I chose peace over chaos and self-respect over familiarity. The process wasn't easy, but it was empowering. With every step forward, I felt stronger. I wasn't losing a marriage anymore. I was reclaiming my life. Ryan tried once more to shift blame, to soften the story, to gain sympathy. It didn't work. The truth was already known. His words no longer carried power. What I felt wasn't joy in his downfall. It was relief. Relief that I had protected myself. Relief that I had chosen honesty over illusion. The justice didn't come from watching him fall. It came from standing up for myself and walking away with my dignity intact. After everything was over, I spent a lot of time thinking about what had happened and what it taught me. I thought about the years I had given, the sacrifices I had made, and the trust one had placed in someone who didn't value it. I realized that betrayal isn't just about broken promises, It's about how someone chooses to treat you when you give them everything. I understood something clearly: love without respect is not love. When someone takes your loyalty, your time, your effort, and treats it as a right rather than a gift, it isn't affection, it's exploitation. No matter how much you give, if it isn't met with honor, it doesn't matter. Protecting your self-worth became the most important lesson. Boundaries aren't just rules, they are acts of self-respect. I learned that saying no, walking away, or demanding fairness isn't cold or cruel. It's necessary. Without boundaries, even the kindest heart can be used and broken again. I had learned that the hard way, but I also learned that I could rise above it stronger than before. I thought about Ryan and the choices he made. Some people confess thinking honesty will save them, thinking a confession will clear their conscience. But I learned the truth is different. When betrayal is revealed, honesty doesn't bring relief or forgiveness automatically. It brings consequences. And those consequences are not punishment, they are reality catching up with actions. I didn't feel joy in Ryan's downfall. My satisfaction wasn't in revenge. It was in clarity and strength. I had faced a situation where my love and trust had been misused, and I had come out with my dignity intact. I had acted with patience, intelligence, and courage, and that made all the difference. Walking away from him wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I didn't need validation from anyone. I didn't need to explain myself. The most important thing was that I respected myself, knew my worth, and refused to be a victim again. Now, I move forward alone, but I am unbroken. I carry the lessons, the strength, and the clarity that betrayal cannot take away. I feel free in a way I never had before. Freedom doesn't mean the absence of pain, it means the absence of control by someone who doesn't value you. If you take anything from my story, let it be this: protect your heart. Stand for yourself. Sacrifice wisely, but never at the cost of your self-respect. Some people will betray, some will lie, and some will take. But when the truth finally comes, it doesn't come to save them, it comes to reveal what they already lost. And I have gained everything I need: my strength, my peace, and my freedom. I walk forward, unafraid, respected, and finally free.